Chapter 11 Nationalist Movement 1923 to 1939. Terms to learn. Charkha, a wheel to spin yarn by hand. Kakori conspiracy case. Looting the cash from a safe which belonged to the government at Kakori railway station by revolutionaries in 1925. Simon Commission. The commission headed by Sir John Simon, which reached India on 3rd February 1928 to review the Government of India Act 1919. Dominion status. The political status of a country in which the country is governed by its own people under some imperial power. It is less than complete independence. Civil disobedience movement. The movement launched by Gandhiji in 1930 to defy the British laws by making salt from sea water at Dandi. Round Table Conference. The conferences held in England between Indian representatives and the British authorities in 1930, 1931 and 1932 to study and discuss about the political situation in India and to find its solution. After the withdrawal of the non-corporation movement, the struggle for freedom suffered a setback. There were communal riots and the Hindu-Muslim unity seemed to be weakening. However, the Swaraj Party formed in 1923 and the constructive program of the Congress helped in keeping the spirit of the freedom struggle alive. Swaraj Party and constructive program. After the withdrawal of the non-corporation movement, the Congress was divided into two groups. When the non-corporation movement was launched, it had been decided to boycott the legislatives. One group led by C.R. Das, Motilal Nehru and Vithal Bhai Patel wanted that the Congress should take part in the elections and wreck the working of the legislatives from within. The other group, which was led by Vallabh Bhai Patel, C. Rajagopalacharya and Dr. Rajendra Prasad, was opposed to this. They wanted the Congress to be engaged in the constructive program. In 1922, the Congress session held at Gaya and presided over by C.R. Das rejected the proposal for entering the legislatures. The supporters of this proposal formed the Congress Khilafat Swaraj Party, popularly known as the Swaraj Party. At a special session held at Delhi under the leadership of Abdul Kalam Azad, the Congress permitted the Swarajists to contest the election. The Swarajists won a large number of seats in the central and provincial legislatures. They made it almost impossible for the British rule to get the approval of the legislatures for their policies and proposals. Gandhiji was released in February 1924 and the constructive program, which was accepted by both the sections of the Congress, became the major activity of the Congress. The most important components of the constructive program were the spread of Khadi, promotion of Hindu-Muslim unity and the removal of untouchability. It became compulsory for Congress members to wear hand-spun and hand-woven khadar. While engaged in any political or Congress activity and spin 2000 yards of yarn every month. Gandhiji thought that the spread of khadi will provide means of livelihood to millions of people and it will spread the message of the freedom struggle to every part of the country, particularly in the rural areas. He considered khadi as the key to the liberation of the poor from their misery and to the economic well-being of the country. Charkha became the symbol of freedom struggle. Gandhiji's work against untouchability helped in bringing the downtrodden and oppressed section of the Indian society into the struggle for freedom. After the withdrawal of non-corporation movement, communal riots had broken out in some parts of the country, so it was essential to unite Hindus and Muslims for strengthening the freedom struggle. Movements of peasants and workers. You have read that Gandhiji had led some movements of the peasants and workers against the oppressive policies of the British government. The movements of peasants intensified during this period. The movements of peasants had two aspects. One was related to the grievance of peasants, oppression of zamindars, the government and the moneylenders, high revenue rent and landlessness, and the other aspect was the participation by the peasants in the struggle for freedom to give it as mass space. The redressal of peasants' grievousness became a major component of the objectives of the struggle for freedom. Many important national leaders played an important role in leading the struggle of the peasants. In 1928, Vallabh Bhai Patel led the struggle of the peasants of Bardoli against increase in revenue. The first All Indian organization of peasants, the All India Kisan Sabha, was formed in 1936. The organization promoted close links between the demands of the peasant and the struggle for freedom. Industrial workers also had begun to form their organization from the early years of the 20th century. One of the major trade unions to be formed was the Madras Labour Union in 1918. One of the prisoners of the trade union movement in India was N.M. Joshi. He played a leading role in building the first All India Organization of Workers, the All India Trade Union Congress. The organization was formed in Bombay in 1920. Its first session was presided over by Lala Lajpat Rai. Just like peasants, the workers' movement, which was primarily concerned with improving workers' living conditions, was also closely connected with the nationalist movement. Many important nationalist leaders such as C.R. Das, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Subhash Chandra Bose also became presidents of All India Trade Union Congress. Spread of socialist ideas. The influence of the socialist ideas and the Russian Revolution of 1917 was widespread among the youth of the country and the younger leaders of the nationalist movements. The most important leader of the nationalist movement who played a leading role in popularizing socialist ideas in Indira was Jawaharlal Nehru. He stressed that it was necessary to link the struggle for freedom with the struggle of the working people for a better life. In 1934, under his influence, the Congress Socialist Party was formed. This party worked within the Congress. The rise of peasants and workers' movement and the growing popularity of the socialist ideas in the country had a deep impact on the struggle for freedom. This impact became increasingly evident during the next phase of the struggle for freedom. Revolutionary movement. You have read about the revolutionary activities during the early years of 20th century. During the non-corporation movement, Gandhiji had emphasized that there should be no act of violence, but the frustration caused by the withdrawal of the movement led to the revival of revolutionary activities in the 1920s. An organization called the Hindustan Republican Association was formed by the revolutionaries. In 1925, a group of revolutionaries stopped a train which was going from Hardoi to Lucknow at a place near Kakori and looted the case from a safe which belonged to the government. It is known as the Kakori conspiracy case. A number of revolutionaries were arrested after this incident. Four of them, Ram Prasad Bismil, Asfakullah Khan, Roshan Singh and Rajendra Lahiri, were sentenced to death. Others were sentenced to long terms of imprisonment. Chandrasekhar Azad, who also belonged to the Hindustan Republican Association, escaped by arrest. He joined hands with other revolutionaries and in 1928 the Hindustan Socialist Republican Army was formed. The most prominent leaders of this organization was Bhagat Singh. In December 1928, a police officer named Saunders was assassinated. He was believed to have been responsible for the death of Lala Lajpat Rai earlier as a result of the lathi blows at the hand of the police. On 8th April 1929, Bhagat Singh and B.K. Das threw two bombs in the Central Legislative Assembly to protest against new repressive laws and the arrest of 31 labor leaders which had taken place earlier in March. Bhagat Singh and B.K. Dutt did not try to escape but stood there raising the slogan Inqilab Jindabad. They were arrested. Later, most other revolutionaries of this group were also arrested. Three of the revolutionaries, Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev, were sentenced to death of the others. Seven were imprisoned for life. In spite of the countrywide protest, Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev were executed on 23rd March 1931. Chandrasekhar Azad, who had again escaped arrest, was shot dead in a park in Allahabad in an encounter with the police. On 18th April 1930, the revolutionaries of the Indian Republican Army, organized by Surya Sen, raided the police armory at Chittorgarh, Bengal. The British rule ceased to exist in Chittorgarh for some time. In December 1930, three young men, Binoy Bose, Badal Gupta and Dinesh Gupta, entered the writers' building in Calcutta and killed the Inspector General of Prison. Most of the leaders of Indian Republican Army who had escaped after fighting the British troops were later arrested. Two of them, Surya Sen and Tarakeshwar Dastidar, were sentenced to death. Two young girls who played an important role in the activities of Indian Revolutionary Army were Pritilata Vadedar and Kalpana Dutt. To escape capture by the British, Pritilita killed herself by taking poison. Kalpana Dutt was prisoned to life imprisonment. The activities of revolutionaries in a period when there was no mass struggle helped in making the people aware of the self-sacrifice and courage required in the struggle for independence. Simon Commission. In 1927, the British government appointed a commission to inquire into the working of the Government of India Act of 1919 and to suggest further reforms in the system of administration. The commission is known as the Simon Commission after Sir John Commission, who headed it. The members of this commission were all Englishmen and not a single Indian was included in it. The government showed no inclination of accepting the demand for Swaraj. In 1927, the annual session of the Congress was held at Madras. It decided to boycott the commission. The Muslim League also decided to boycott the commission. The commission arrived in India on 3rd February 1928. On that day, the entire country observed a hartal. The commission faced massive protest demonstration and hartals wherever it went. All over the country, the cry of Simon go back was raised. The police resorted to repressive measures. Thousands of people were beaten up. It was during these demonstrations that the great nationalist leader Lala Lajpat Rai, who was popularly known as Sher-e-Punjab, was severely assaulted by the police. He died of the injuries inflicted upon him by the police. In Lucknow, Jawaharlal Nehru and Govind Balla Pant were among those who suffered blows of police lathis. The lathi blows crippled Govind Ballabh Pant for life. In December 1928, the Congress met at Calcutta under the presidency of Motilal Nehru and passed a resolution demanding dominant status. This meant less than complete independence, but it was declared that if the dominant status was not granted within 1 year, the Congress would demand complete independence and would launch a mass movement to achieve it. Demand for complete independence. As the 1 year ultimatum given to the British government to grant dominant status to India ended in December 1929, when the Lahore session of the Congress began under the presidency of Jawaharlal Nehru, the resolution of complete independence was adopted. To achieve this aim, it was decided to launch a civil disobedience movement. The Congress also decided that 26th January would be observed as the Independence Day all over the country every year. On 26 January 1930, Independence Day was observed all over the country. Later, the memorable day was chosen as India's Republic Day, on which independent India's constitution came in force. Civil disobedience movement. The civil disobedience movement started under the leadership of Gandhiji with his famous Dandi March on 12th March 1930. Gandhiji left the Sabarmati ashram at Ahmedabad on foot with 78 other members of the ashram for Dandi, a village on the western sea coast of India at a distance of about 385 km from Ahmedabad. They reached Dandi on 6th April 1930. There, Gandhiji broke the salt law. It was illegal for anyone to make salt as it was a government monopoly. Gandhiji defied the government by picking up a handful of salt which had been formed by the evaporation of seawater. The defiance of the salt law was followed by the spread of civil disobedience movement all over the country. There were demonstrations, hartals, boycott of foreign goods, and later refusal to pay taxes. Lakhs of people participated in the movement, including a large number of women. All the important leaders were arrested and the Congress was banned. There were firings and lathi charges and hundreds of people were killed. About 90,000 persons were imprisoned within a year of the movement. In the northwestern frontier province, the movement was launched by Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, who came to be known as the Frontier Gandhi. In November 1930, the British government convened the first round table conference in London to consider the reforms proposed by the Simon Commission. The Congress, which was fighting for the independence of the country, boycotted it, but it was attended by the representatives of the Indian princes, Muslim leagues, Hindu Mahasabhas and some others, but nothing came out of it. Earlier, in 1931, efforts were made by Viceroy Lord Irwin to persuade the Congress to join the second round table conference. An agreement was made between Gandhiji and Irwin, according to which the government agreed to release all political prisoners against whom there were no charges of violence. The Congress was to suspend the civil disobedience movement. Many nationalist leaders were unhappy with this agreement. However, at its Karachi session, which was held in March 1931 and was presided over by Vallabhbhai Patel, the Congress decided to approve the agreement and participate in the second round table conference. Gandhiji was chosen to represent the Congress at the conference, which was held in September 1931. This conference was also attended by Indian princes and the communal leaders of Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs. Neither the princes nor the communal leaders were interested in India's independence. Therefore, no agreement could be reached and the second round table conference ended in a failure. Gandhiji returned to India and the civil disobedience movement was revived. At the Congress session of 1931 held at Karachi, an important resolution moved by Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose was passed. It broadened the Congress national program to include the principles of fundamental rights and a national economic policy comprising promotion of Indian industries and schemes for the welfare of workers and peasants. This revolution showed the growing influence of the ideas of socialism on the nationalist movement. The government repression had been continuing even while the second round table conference was going on and now it was intensified. Gandhiji and other leaders were arrested. In about a year, 1,20,000 persons were sent to jail. The movement was withdrawn in 1934. The Congress passed an important resolution in 1934. It demanded that a constituent assembly elected by the people on the basis of adult franchise be convened. It declared that only such an assembly could frame a constitution for India. The Third Round Table Conference 1932 led to the passing of the Government of India Act 1935. The Congress did not attend this conference. Government of India Act 1935. The Congress had declared that only the Indian people were competent to decide as to what kind of constitution would be framed for the government of the country. For this, it had demanded the conveying of constituent assembly elected by the Indian people, each Indian adult enjoying the right to vote. The British government, however, ignored this demand and in August 1935 announced the Government of India Act. According to this act, India would become a federation if 50% of Indian states decided to join it. They would then have a large number of representatives in the two houses of the central legislative. However, the provinces with regard to the federation were not implemented. The act made no reference even to granting dominion status, much less independence to India. With regard to the provinces, the Act of 1935 was an improvement in the existing position. It introduced what is known as provincial autonomy. The ministers of provincial governments, according to it, were to be responsible to the legislative. The powers of the legislature were increased. However, in certain matters like the police, the government had the authority. The right to vote also remained limited. Only about 14% of the population got the right to vote. The appointment of the Governor General and Governors of course remained in the hands of British government and they were not responsible to the legislatives. The act never came near the objective that the nationalist movement had been struggling for. At its 1936 session held at Lucknow under the presidency of Jawaharlal Nehru, the Congress rejected the Act of 1935. It repeated the demand for a constituent assembly. However, it decided to participate in the election to the provincial legislative assemblies that were held in 1937. The Congress swept the polls in 6 provinces. It won an absolute majority of seats. In 3 others, it was the single largest party. The Muslim League, which claimed to represent all the Muslims, secured less than a quarter of seats reserved for Muslims. In the Northwest Frontier province, the Muslim League did not win a single seat. The Hindus' communal parties were also defeated. The result of the election showed that the parties based on religion did not have much influence. The Congress formed its ministries in 7 out of 11 provinces. In 2 more provinces, it formed government with the help of other parties. Only in 2 provinces there were no Congress ministries. These ministries did some useful work in the field of education and also improved the lot of the peasants. They released prisoners who had been detained for participating in the freedom struggle. They lifted the bans on newspapers. These ministries influenced the people in the Indian state. The people suffering under the autocratic rule of the princes saw the government of so many provinces in India were being run by the representatives of the people. Many nationalist leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose had been opposed to the formation of ministries by the Congress. The influence of the workers and peasants organization had grown in the country. The Congress Socialist Party under leaders like Acharya Narendra Dev had become a strong force. The influence of the Communist Party had also grown. Thus, the influence of people who did not want to compromise with the British government had grown. They wanted complete independence and were in favor of launching a movement for it. Some of the moderates in the Congress were, however, not in favor of launching the movement immediately. Soon after these developments, big changes took place in the world situation with the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939. These changes had an immediate impact on India and the struggle for freedom entered its last phase. Lesson at a glance. After the withdrawal of non-corporation movement, the Congress was divided into two groups. One group formed the Swaraj Party and contested the election. They won a large number of seats in legislature. The other was opposed to it. They wanted the Congress to be engaged in the constructive program. Gandhiji was released in February 1924 and the constructive program was accepted by both the sections of the Congress. It included the spread of Khadi, promotion of Hindu-Muslim unity and removal of untouchability. The peasants and industrial workers started movement against their grievances. Some of these movements were led by prominent nationalist leaders and became part of the freedom struggle. The frustration caused by the withdrawal of the non-corporation movement led to the revival of revolutionary activities. In 1925, a group of revolutionaries looted the cash from a safe which belonged to the government at Kakori railway station. In December 1928, a police officer Saunders were assassinated. On 8th April 1929, Bhagat Singh and B.K. Dutt threw two bombs in the Central Legislative Assembly. On 18th April 1930, the revolutionaries raided the police armory at Chittorgarh. Simon Commission arrived in India on 3rd February 1928. There was a widespread boycott of the commission because no Indian was included in it and it showed no inclination to accept the demand of Swaraj. In the Lahore session of Congress in December 1929, the resolution of complete independence was adopted and 26 January 1930 was observed Independence Day all over the country. Gandhiji started civil disobedience movement by his famous Dandi March and defied the salt law on 6th April 1930 by making salt from seawater. 3 round table conferences were held in London but the Congress participated only in the second round table conference. The Government of India Act 1935 proposed a federation of Indian states but it was never formed. The act introduced some political autonomy in the provincial legislatures. In the elections for provisional legislatures held in 1937, the Congress swept the polls, forming ministries in the 7 of the 11 provinces. Muslim League secured less than a quarter of seats reserved for Muslims. It didn't get even a single seat in the North West Frontier province.